Hello and welcome to the Brass Junkies. I'm your host, Andrew Hitz, and I'm joined by my co-host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I appreciate the sincerity with which you ask that question.
I ask it. I never plan to ask. It's always the first thing that comes up because I just need to know.
Oh my God, you're so sweet. You are so sweet. Sweet.
I've never heard you speak in that voice, and I
we just said for some
never
reason,
to ever again.
So my one of my brother's kids, we were all together for a holiday thing, and he just started doing that, and so then all of us just started doing that. And we're like, "Hey, would you get me a whatever?" And they're like, "Oh my God, that is so sweet of you. Thank you for that." So for three days, we're all insane. Yeah, it was fun.
I am now disappointed that you did not speak to the Boston Symphony Orchestra Steve Lange in that voice at all.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Andrew.
Lance had never met Steve until today. Steve and I go way back, but as you just heard, he's just one of the nicest people that I have met in the business, and it's always nice when the level of success that he has enjoyed happens to people that are that good, because it just forces you to be good when you're around dudes like that. So and there's like a bunch of them in that orchestra too, like Roy Lance. Like I've never met Jim Markey, but I've heard, like, that's all I've heard is that he's the nicest human that has ever, Michael Martin. I mean, it's just.
Well, I asked the question, but that it wasn't the trying to get dirt kind of question, but invariably it was talking about the section or the whole brass section of the orchestra deciding how they wanted to do certain things, and I asked how they dealt with disagreements, and you could have, if you had an agenda, that would have been an opportunity for you to go down that road, and it was just, he said it doesn't tend to happen. They all sort of own up to what they need to do, and it's very collegial, which says something. Yeah.
As I was just saying to Lance in between the interview and the intro here, when Steve and I played in the National Repertory Orchestra together almost 25 years ago during that summer, the schedule is just so intense that you get to know the real version of people because it's stressful. Like, we arrived and then it's like 2 days rehearsal and then pitch that exhibition at altitude. And we were often, they just threw you into the deep end, and it did not let up until you flew home 8 weeks later to full programs of like the likes of Alpine Symphony and Symphonie Fantastique and Don Juan. It just went on and on. And he was so steady. Again, just a musical beast, but just such a steady person. It was great influence on me. So
it's worth popping over to YouTube just to see the setting that he's recording from, because that's kind of hilarious. And it'll help if you're only listening to it. Just pop over and even just look at the screenshot of it. You'll get an idea of what we're talking about.
If we were selling something, then absolutely the offer code would be Velcro. That's all that I will say. Speaking of Velcro, thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba Mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model Euphonium Mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I've also never seen you do a chef's kiss before. This is all, this is all new territory. The bonus episode, talk about Lee Hip saving my biscuits, talking about a gig where I won't spoil it, but kind of a major gig that Steve played where he didn't quite have everything that he needed for the gig. I enjoyed that story.
That's a good one.
Very, very, very much. Yeah, that was good. You can get access to that if you become a Patreon patron, which many of you have already done. Thank you very much to all of you for helping to support the show. You can go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to get access to bonus episodes with Steve, with his colleagues Michael Martin and Mike Roylance, and with Joe Alessi, and like the list just goes on and on and on. So thank you to everybody who's done that. And Lance, thank you.
No, thank you.
Just for being just being the person that you are. I tried to sound genuine. Like the smile was like, I was like, stop. Anyway, without further ado, let us get to the conversation that we just had with the Boston Symphony Orchestra's Steve Lange.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more content by the Brass Junkies, just click on the like and subscribe button. You'll have an opportunity to see some of the greatest brass players in the world, and Andrew and me.
And today on the Brass Junkies, we are joined by world-renowned trombone player Steve Lange of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Steve, how are you? Doing good. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. It is an honor for you. Yeah, it's thank you for admitting that. We had I think that
are you at an undisclosed location? Blink twice if you're in trouble.
Super top secret.
He's in Roy Lance's summer house's basement. He's been locked in there because he's been playing too loud lately. So what we were just commenting that this was the most entertaining pre-interview. That this is episode 191, and maybe 10 of those have not been interviews; they've been listeners' choice. But yeah, this was the most entertaining. So tell us about your fascination with Velcro, Steve Lange.
Velcro. Well, gosh, I'm getting up there. It's inevitable. I'm going to have Velcro shoes at some point. So I might as well get a head start. I'm in. Velcro. So yeah, I'm in a whisper room. This is we call it like a family saver, a child saver, wife saver. Of all things, but this is on the main floor of my house, and I bought it a couple years ago off Craigslist, and I discovered that everything that I had, space is a premium. There's a 5x7 room, and so I just got a big roll of Velcro and just started Velcroing things, and so this is Velcro. Everything is Velcro on here, and if I'm, boom, the remote. I mean, everything is Velcro. In fact, I used to have Velcro on the back of my phone, and I would just be like, so that's basically it, practice coffin. That's what this is.
The cherry on top was when, because also his lighting, which we think is super hip, but it keeps on changing. It's like it's going from Bohemian Rhapsody video to well lit to FBI informant, giving background info and an A&E mob special. It's and then you said, yep, sometimes the light falls, so we'll see if that happens.
I have a light up here, and literally fell about 20 minutes before this interview.
Awesome.
And so I'm super gluing the Velcro to the light, and it might hold, it might not. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
So you've got this room off Craigslist?
Yeah.
Were you looking for who? Talk me
who would
through
sell
that.
something like this?
Yeah.
Well, it's modular, and I bought, it was like a 300-mile range on Craigslist. I was like, I don't want to. I'm cheap. I don't want to spend full price on a whisper room. So I was looking on Craigslist, and sure enough, there was one. It was a former voiceover actor who left the house. I don't know what the circumstances were, but the house was sold, and the whisper room was in it, and the new owners were like, we don't need this thing. So I was like, yeah, I'll come by, and it was probably less than half the cost of a brand new one. So it's like, yeah, but why not? And so I built it, and it's in one of the bedrooms on the first floor, and it's been great. It's not totally soundproof, but it's great. And during the pandemic, it was an absolute lifesaver. It was an absolute lifesaver because I could continue practicing, and my boys could. I have two boys; they could practice, and we could watch TV at the same time as well. So,
can you hear the sound of the Velcro ripping off the wall if you're outside of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. That's not part of my testing protocol, but I think it should be.
It should be for sure.
When you
took get a sponsorship.
When you took the valve oil off the wall and stuck it behind you, that was when I lost it. That was that was good.
Yeah, pretty soon it will be shoes. Just Velcro the shoes onto the wall. Yep.
You had a tearaway tux.
Oh God, that's next. I hadn't thought about that. Yep.
Come off stage.
You got the tearaway sweatpants, tearaway tux, and then just Velcro tux.
Oh goodness, yeah. The sound hasn't even ended ringing out of the hall, and like he's already in his sweatsuit. Yeah, just like slamming his locker shut and walking out.
Love it.
Did I ever tell that story about when I was in the Air Force Band? I set my locker up so that I could change. The locker room was just across the hall from the rehearsal hall. And I set my locker up such a way, and I had my car in the parking lot in such a way that I could get off base as fast as possible. Like I had the clothes all strategically like organized in the locker. And so the rehearsal's over. I bust into the locker room. I'm into my civilian clothes. I bang into the hallway, and I'm like face to face with the conductor, who was just coming out of the rehearsal room. I'm already in my civilian clothes. And he looks at me and he goes, "What, you got a phone booth in there?" Okay. I said, "Yes, sir." And I kept going.
Absolutely.
The National Symphony at the Kennedy Center, they all park in the same garage as all of the people at the concert. And so they tend to, if you take just a little bit of time to get off stage, and as a sub, like, I've done it a number of times, but it's still special. It's not work, right? I mean, so I'm like kind of taking it in. And if I take like 2 minutes, I walk back there, it's like I just played a solo recital. There's not a soul back there. It's just like, it's like the percussionists who are still putting things away, and like me and the conductor, and that's it. It's like, okay, they're all gone. It's amazing.
That happens in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Most places, actually.
Yeah. So let's talk about your. I was lucky enough to play in a section with Steve at the National Repertory Orchestra the summer of 1998, which was just, oh my goodness, so much fun and so much growth musically for me. And it was.
Me too.
That was. Well, talk about that summer, because we got really. I mean, you've probably played all of that rep 10 times since then, but we got like thrown in the deep end of the swimming pool there with like the amount of music that we were playing in a short time. Can you talk about that?
Well, I wanted to be there so badly because just for that fact, the sheer quantity of repertoire. I mean, that's why it's called the National Repertory Orchestra. And I believe there were, was it 3 concerts a week or was it 2 concerts a week? I can't remember, but
I think it was 2. Yeah,
it was 2. Okay.
But 2 completely different programs every single week.
Two completely different programs, and they weren't light programs. They were tough.
Alpine Symphony tough.
I specifically remember the Alpine Symphony. I was just about to mention that. I think we played the Planets. We played, I think, Don Juan. I mean, I remember all these things because, well, for example, Alpine Symphony, that was the first time I'd ever played it. So, you always remember the first time you've played something, and that was a memorable concert.
Yeah.
Good times. Jamie Bucks, he was in that section.
He's pretty good.
He's doing quite well for himself in the Montreal Symphony, and we stay in touch. He's doing well. I learned so much from him. He studied with Steve Witzer at Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I was. It was kind of he's just such a sweet player, and Steve was such a great teacher, and I learned a lot from Jamie that summer.
Yeah. And I was stunned at how consistent both of you were. Like just like every rehearsal, every time, it's just solid as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
You too, man.
It was
it was a great summer. Being out in Colorado was a great. It was kind of like a retreat, but it was also kind of like drinking from a fire hose too. So you could kind of relax a couple days here and there, and then it was like, okay, you better get back on it, and that's what it's all about.
The first concert was pictures, and I remember that we got to like the catacombs, and like we're all we'd only been at 9,700 feet for like 2 days, and like
I forgot about that.
Those chords, like they had like these like perfect diminuendos, and it's like those are not supposed to get softer, but at least all of us were getting softer together as a section. So
that's right.
We fixed it by the concert, but the sustain was more of like a concept.
I forgot about that. It took a couple of weeks to adjust.
Mm-hmm. It did, but then went back down to sea level and was like,
you feel like Superman,
flipping cars over, with just my air. Yeah, that was. So then your first professional gig was the San Antonio Symphony, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then talk about that.
Well, I mean, just before that was my second year at the Juilliard School, and I'd undergone some things that I had to deal with, and then things just started to kind of crystallize, and there, it was like a really nice little pocket of time where things seemed to be working well, and the Marine Band came up, and I was able to win that job. And so I thought I was going to go to the Marine Band, and my wife at the time, she was offered a job with the Kennedy Center Orchestra. So we're like, we're all set, and we'll just go to DC. We thought about doing that. And but I had already had my application sent in to the San Antonio Symphony. I was like, you know what, let's just give this a go. And so when that worked out, so I eventually played second trombone in the San Antonio Symphony. Colin Williams was the principal, and we were buddies at Juilliard too. But that was I was thinking about time. As time goes on, you look back at specific moments in your life where you go, okay, I don't know if I would have done that again had I known everything, but at the same time, you have to take risks, and that was a risk, and it was actually a big risk going to the San Antonio Symphony. I think not knowing, like I said, if I had known what I know now. Obviously the Marine Band is a wonderful place to be. My brother-in-law plays there. He's the timpanist. Everything was set. But I wanted to play in an orchestra, and so I decided to go to the San Antonio Symphony, and didn't know when I signed on that they didn't get all their paychecks the previous year, and so on and so forth. But I loved my year in the San Antonio Symphony. Had a great experience. Colin was the principal. There were two openings that year. Matt Vaughn had won a job in the Philadelphia Orchestra, and he was the second trombone player in the San Antonio Symphony. The first trombone player was Mark Horner, and I don't know if you know that story, but it's not a good story.
No.
Maybe we don't need to go into that right now, but
he was killed. Very tragically. So, and what a sweetheart. My goodness.
Yeah, did you know him?
I did. I was in the lower orchestra at the Greater Boston Youth Symphony when he was in the upper one, and he was always I looked up to him. Yeah. He was so kind, and just a phenomenal player, obviously.
Yeah, I wish I had gotten to know him better. I did meet him a couple of times, but I never got to play with him, regretfully. But it's just kind of. When you look at the course of everything, he was in the finals for principal trombone in the St. Louis Symphony, and the person who ended up winning that principal job was the assistant principal there in St. Louis, Tim Myers, which created an opening for me later on.
There you go.
So this is like it was a real domino thing, and. I look back and it's like, wow. Yeah. So anyway, the year in San Antonio was a good one. I was there for a couple months. The bass trombonist is Larry Bird, really, really terrific player as well. And Steve DeMaine, who's now in the National Symphony. And he was there for a couple years on consecutive one-year contracts because I think, who was it? Lee Hip. I think he's the tubist there. He was out, I believe, in Salt Lake, but I'm not sure.
He was.
So, anyways,
yes.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So it was a while back, but it was a great year. We had a lot of laughs, and I look fondly on that time period.
I have got I've got a good story for the bonus episode about one time when Lee Hip absolutely saved my professional biscuits in like a super high profile situation. So yeah.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, it
awesome.
was I could never pay him back. So yeah. Anyway, we'll get into that in the bonus episode.
So I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but you made an inference that maybe you were dealing with an embouchure change or something. What were you going through at Juilliard? You indicated that
that's
there was...
That's a good question. As most people, go through, I think most people, everyone I talk to who's been in the trenches at a music school and worked themselves out of it. I was in a trench. I was in a trench at the beginning of the year, and I decided that I needed to do a little bit of a change, and probably the bottom of that was when I went to the Cincinnati audition. It was for principal, and Christian Ganachenko won that job. But I thought I could go in and play well enough to hopefully advance. I thought, this is the time. This is my time. But the reality, looking back, I couldn't figure out which embouchure to use for Bolero. That's really not a good place to be going into an audition, is to, should I use this on? It really, yeah. So
should I shoot this free throw with my right hand or my left hand with the game on the line?
Yeah, exactly. So clearly, I didn't advance, but I remember coming back from that. I was absolutely dejected. I was broken, and then I got sick. It's like when you have these expectations that, whatever the expectations are, and then you don't meet them. It's just pure like dropout, and that's what I experienced. And I came back, and then I got sick. I got physically sick, and of course I had a lesson with Joe right when I came back, and I've told this story to my students. If I remember walking in like kind of like moping. I was like a limp noodle. Like I should just quit. I mean, this is really bad, And it's like, no, he was so supportive, And he was like, listen, let's just get back to having fun playing your instrument. Let's just play a Bordoni. I've been attacking excerpts for a few weeks at that point. So I was like, okay, I was sick. Physically, my brain wasn't engaged, my body wasn't engaged. So I started playing, and I was like, wait a second. This might be the best sound that I've made. Why? And he saw it too. It was like, okay, yeah, And so then it dawned on me that I was trying way too hard, physically and mentally. But if I could just channel that, but keep my body relaxed, maybe. And that was a breakthrough moment for me. So
then how do you apply that? So you have this light bulb moment, and it's one thing to have the realization, but it's another thing to manifest it. So how did you? What was that process?
Well, that was all happening in my third semester at Juilliard. So right around November, October, somewhere around in there. Well, the next semester, a class opened up. And actually 2 classes opened up that changed my life. And those 2 classes were Alexander Technique, that I had never heard of or done anything about, with Lori Schiff, and she's still there, and a performance class. The Don Green. Who is this guy, Don Green? I'd never heard of him. But it didn't matter. I was like, yeah, if it's going to help me play, that's great. And so I took that class. And as I was taking that class, I was like, is this guy a musician? Who is this? And as he started talking about what he's done and how he came to Juilliard, I was like, this is amazing. I was so lucky to get in that class. Someone had dropped it because of something, and I was late, and I just happened to be in the registrar's office, and I was the last one in. And that particular class, every week he was writing a new chapter in his performance success book. And if you haven't read that, that was a life-changing experience. I still have all of my notes from that, and I still have my big book of stuff, and of course you can buy the book, but just having those notes and going, that was just so great, and we had these adversity mock auditions, and actually that was the final exam. I had to do an audition where anything could happen. And he's like, yeah, I'm not a musician, so I'm bringing two musicians on board so that you know that it's not going to be. I mean, and we were graded based on how well we stayed composed, basically. And we had a 7-step centering technique that we had to use, and mental rehearsal and awareness and recovery strategies and all sorts of things. And I'll never forget playing Saint Saëns 3 and my buddy Andy Grams, who's now a conductor. And I see out of the corner of my eye Andy Grams sprinting towards me in this big room, and then he slides as if he's sliding to home base, and he barely missed me, I think. And I'm just playing Saint Saëns 3 all the way through, and I was like, wow, this is the training that I needed, and so that changed my life right there.
That is really cool. I want to hear a little bit more about the Alexander technique and what that did for you as well. But before we do that, I want to let you know that the Mary Papert School of Music at Duquesne University is a fine institution, longtime sponsor of the Brass Junkies, and want to encourage you to go click on the link in the show notes so you can find out all the ways you can be involved with music if you're an aspiring brass player. Fantastic ensembles, great faculty, and Pittsburgh's a cool town, despite what Andrew will tell you. So
I love
come
Pittsburgh.
check it. I'm just teasing. So thank you very much to the Mary Papert School of Music for being a long-term sponsor. I enjoy the fact that Steve is getting further and further into the dark and then back into the light. And an extra special thanks to Jim Velcro Pants Nova for making it possible. I mean, how's he going to get a bubble butt in there without Velcro pants? I think.
No, and I want to be clear. I love Pittsburgh. I love the Steelers and Penguins can take a slow walk into the ocean, but I love the city of Pittsburgh. It's a great place.
What about the Pirates? What's your position on the Pirates?
I wasn't old enough the last time that they were really a threat to anybody to remember. So the beautiful ballpark. I've got no hatred for the Pirates.
Cool, man.
Yeah. Hey, good food, good people, except for Lance.
Yeah.
Like Craig is nice, Jim's nice.
Yeah.
There's nice people there.
It's fair.
And Lance.
And I'm there.
All right.
All right, Alexander technique.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about this too.
Okay, Alexander technique.
So what did it like? I mean, you don't need to give a full dissertation on the Alexander technique, but what did it do for you? Like, how did it help you?
Well, I realized. Well, first of all, it was awareness, right? Just being aware of the physical and the mental. And I think what Lori helped me with. First of all, what those sessions were like. They were group sessions, actually. So I would sit there and watch her work with other people, and she would take. I was converted in the first session when she took a baritone singer who was also in the class, and he just sat there and was like, okay, and she was like, okay, stand like you would normally stand, and then she would systematically move different parts of his body. And then after about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of just putting everything exactly where she thought it should be, he looked like he was about an inch taller. Not that he was struggling to try to stand taller, but he looked taller. And then he sang. And he sang before the adjustment and then after, and it was just lights out different. It was awesome. So I was like, okay, can you do that for me? I said, absolutely. So that's what we did, and we did table work, and then she would, and I realized that I was harboring a lot of tension in certain places. I still do, but at least now I have like sort of a game plan to kind of work on it. And as long as you're aware about of these things, you can fix these things. And so having that experience was wonderful. Yeah, it was great.
Well, it's sort of interesting. I hadn't really heard it put this way before, but it sounds like on the Don Green side, there was this great attention to detail, to specifics to do with the mental aspects of what you were doing. It's like attention, like noticing things that you hadn't noticed. And then it's the exact same thing, but in the physical manifestation on the Alexander technique, where it's subtle adjustments, both mentally and then physically, that help kind of put that. There's an interesting kind of 1-2 punch there.
Yeah, they definitely overlapped.
Right.
Both the Alexander technique and Don Green's techniques. With Alexander, maybe I took more away from it at the time, that it was more physical, but that's not really what Alexander technique is 100% about. So I don't want to say that, but that's what I took in the sessions that I had. One of my students, former students, Vicky Garcia, she's a Alexander technique specialist, and I had her come in and work with my students. And I learned a lot from her. She became certified, and she helped my students in a way that I couldn't help her. It was help my students. It was just phenomenal. But she talks about the awareness not only up here but also everywhere else. Just noticing where your feet are, noticing where your hips are, noticing what happens to your shoulder, noticing like if you're where the slide arm is and how it's moving, what's happening in the shoulder as you move, what's happening to the head, and these are all things that we should all notice and be aware of, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's to me it's just about resonance, not the horn you play or the mouthpiece. Really, it's just the kind of resonance that you get and the sound that you have in your head. And I found that doing all of those things, even when I'm playing something as energy charged as maybe say Mahler 3 or Rite of the Valkyries, if I could still find a way to be as relaxed and allow the air to move through the horn, what effects does that have? Because in your brain, should you feel like you're actually on a horse, playing Ride of the... Should you actually feel that way when you play Ride of the Valkyries? Or should you... What if you just took, a so-called Bordoni breath and played Ride of the Valkyries? So, is this something that you think you should feel or not? And so those kinds of thoughts and questions became, I just started asking those questions and started experimenting, and that was a big deal for me. And then I remember it culminated in this. I played Mahler 7 in school, and I was like, okay, I'm going to see if I can just stay centered the entire time. That's my only purpose. That's my only thought. Like, I don't care what comes out of my bell. And the concert just flew by, and I'm like, oh. Shouldn't I feel like I just played a Mahler 7 concert? Shouldn't I feel like, man, I just expended all of my energy and, no, I just felt like, yeah, okay, I'll just go to sleep. Yeah, it's Mahler 7. But then people would say, wow, the sound, whatever, okay. So those kinds of thoughts, that was interesting to me. So what should you feel like after an audition? What should you feel like after Alpine Symphony? Whereas at one point I thought I should feel exhausted. I should feel tight. I should feel tired. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. Because when you're performing, is it really about you or is it about the audience and what they're getting from it? So that's when things started to change for me.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah. There's been sort of I wouldn't say backlash. That's too strong of a thing. But there's been in acting, method acting was a big deal for a while, and there's been I don't know, push is the right word. That's been sort of fading away because it's had so many detrimental effects on so many actors who were using very raw emotions from their own personal background to portray these roles, and there was a human toll. I mean, it was like really screwing these people up. And then there's this thought: well, do I need to I just need to like say these lines right at this time in this manner and convey this idea, but I don't need to be a casualty of war in that in order to make that happen.
Bingo.
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
Bingo. That's exactly it.
Go ahead, Lance. We both took a breath in.
So, did you notice any commonality in your studio when you had her in to work with the studio? Were there things that everyone in the studio tended to do, or was it very individual?
It completely individual. Completely. I had one student whose hips were completely locked, and that was one thing. Another student who's, from here up was way overactive. All of these things, if we can just begin to notice these things, and the effect that it has when you can address them, it's pretty cool. For me, it's on my right shoulder. I don't know. I work through it. So sometimes it was my left shoulder. Actually, I used to suffer from a lot of pain, in my left shoulder, and then in between the shoulder blades back here. It was horrible. In fact, when I got my job in the Boston Symphony, I was so nervous and so jacked up that after the first week of concerts, and that talk about Tanglewood, that is no joke. That's 3 different separate concerts, and
I know
one of the concerts was Berg 3 pieces. So I was and they're evaluating you and all this stuff, and I was like,
sure,
but yeah, I could barely move, and it was you pick up the horn, and you're like, oh my God, okay, and I was aware of this, but it was really difficult to overcome it. So yeah. But I got through it. I got some help and made it through. But it's not easy. It wasn't easy then. But ultimately it was a problem. I had to have surgery on. So I had surgery on that about a year and a half ago. So that helped. That helps. So I'm not saying surgery is going to fix everything, because I dealt with it for over 10 years.
I mean,
but
you've got two.
Surgery or Velcro.
Yeah.
So this is maybe it's a softball. So how has this impacted your teaching, your studio teaching? Like the knowledge that you have and bringing these experts in and knowing what you know and going through what you've gone through. What do you bring into the teaching studio with you?
It'd be funny if he said absolutely nothing. He hasn't changed
as
a teacher at all.
What do you bring with you? Velcro.
Well, you mentioned softball. Do you mean softball, or do you mean just all the different things that
I mean, it's maybe it's self-evident, but like, how has this impacted your teaching? Like all of the knowledge you've accumulated about.
Sure.
That.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that it's not a one size fits all for teaching. When I first started teaching, it was 1 hour a week. That's all I needed to do. That's all I was contracted to do. That's all I was paid to do from NEC. And then, I started to see some things, it's like, I'm not spending enough time with these students. So I started adding a studio class. In the studio class, they could play for each other, and then we start to learn how they talk to each other, and you start to see how people interact with other people other than just you, and then you start to kind of see, okay, what's going on in there. I think knowledge, the knowledge of having all of these different things, of course, the Don Green techniques, and to a certain extent that I can. The Alexander technique kinds of things, those help inform the teaching. But as a student, I think you gotta have like a whole coaching staff, basically. That's what I think needs to happen. You can't just have one teacher. You need to have a support system of colleagues. You can't do this alone. I didn't do it alone. I can name all the different people through IU and Juilliard who have great jobs right now. I wouldn't be here without them. Great teachers, but not just one teacher, but 3 teachers, and not just 3 trombone teachers, but I had Alexander technique teachers. I had Don Green, who's is a performance coach. Also looking back at my time playing baseball, looking at the parallels between sports and music, and then trying to connect with the students who don't like sports. I can connect with them, and I have a few of those, and I have a few of those who did play competitive sports, and they they've had a hard coach, or but some people are need more firm instruction, and some people need more encouragement. Some people like just different things, and so I had a student a couple years ago who was like, I don't want you to hold anything back. Tell me exactly what you're okay. All right, here we go. And so I can do that. But and even sometimes when they say that, do they really need that?
Like you said, they may mean it, but do they need it? Is that going to be the most helpful thing for them?
There you have it. So what I enjoy is trying to figure each student out and approach them in a way that I think that they'll succeed the best.
And to me, that's the rewarding part of teaching. Like, yeah, it's hard, but that's, in my opinion, the only way to teach truly well. But that's also the challenging part. I would understand more the people that take the one-size-fits-all approach to teaching if, like, trying to get to know the students and directly teach them was boring or tedious. But to me, it's the exact opposite of that. Like, treating everybody the same is boring and tedious, right? Like. And I'm not saying I would excuse it if it was the boring and tedious and you skipped it, but it would just be more understandable. But yeah, you have to teach the student in front of you, which before I did like the worst possible interview thing you could do, which was I was like, so your first gig was San Antonio Symphony. Tell us about that. That's the worst possible like question that you can add, but so it's not like we're
you could come up with a worse question.
It's not like we're not like if you like Google like how to interview someone, the first thing it says is don't just say tell me about blank. Like you have to ask them something specific, and you had a great answer. You made me look better than you should have. But like it's not like we're like these legendary interviewers, but imagine if we asked everybody the same questions. Like, okay, they're in a major symphony, so here are the 10 questions. It would just be like boring as hell to be on this side of the mic, to be interviewed, to be listening. I don't get it. So it's so great hearing somebody in a position like you are to be talking like with this kind of passion about your teaching philosophy, because you got to get to know the student and then you got to do whatever's best for them, and I just don't see any other way.
Andrew, that reminds me that Houchin Horns aims to spread the joy of music through providing the highest level of products, services, and resources to the brass playing community.
Reminded me of that too.
15-day money-back guarantee with free shipping on all new instruments and accessories with multiple easy financing options on all inventory. Terms and conditions apply. Mouthpieces by Greg Beck, Lasky, Pickett, Schilke, and more. The unique Varus brand products, specially designed by the craftsmen and pro musicians of Houchin Horns. Repairs and customizations are done in-house. You can watch over 200 unique videos on Houchin Horns' YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Houchin Horns. And if you enter the promo code Junkies at online checkout, you'll receive 10% off your purchase from HouchinHorns.com. Some limitations apply.
Steve had never met Lance before today. We're like 45 minutes into this call, and he now feels like he's known you his whole life, and not in a good way.
Wish he hadn't.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about we've barely talked. First of all, Tanglewood. I love, I've like run into Steve in the grocery store, like in the Berkshires, which is it's like why I love that place. Where it's like, yeah, of course, there's Steve Lange. He's just like grabbing some milk, like, and checking out. Is he going whole? Is he going like skim? Like, what's he going with here? But talking about the Boston Symphony, and something that the Boston Symphony is doing that's remarkable, that's different than a lot of orchestras, is that you are making a ton of recordings, like a lot of recordings, and a lot of really, really good, high quality, like just top-notch musical storytelling. It's fantastic. Can you talk about what it's like to be in an orchestra that is making so many recordings nowadays, when that is a lot more rare with major orchestras, and maybe take us behind the scenes for what one of those recording sessions looks like?
Sure, happy to. Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, you'd listen to the Chicago Symphony, the New York Philharmonic, or the Montreal Symphony. You'd be like, oh man, I wish I was that person. Oh my gosh, that'd be so cool. And then it's happening, and here we are. We're, in the BSO, and this is in large part to Andres Nelson's, who's just this just really great, down to earth guy, who's passionate about his music, and we're really fortunate. It started off with I guess the first disc we did was Tannhauser. It was Tannhauser and Sibelius 2, and then it went right into the whole Shostakovich, all those symphonies, and we will finish this year. What were they like? What were they like at the beginning? Because this has taken a while. Okay. So we'll do 13 and 3 this year, and then we'll be done. What are they like? Well, I can tell you what they were like at first. I think the first one we did was 10, and then 5. I believe we did those first, and I was pretty nervous about them, quite frankly.
I bet.
And so we're really looking at as an orchestra, everyone was on top of their stuff. Everyone was coming in, and we had a fully assembled brass section at that point, which was amazing, because that had taken some time to turn over. But I don't remember who the last person in was. It may have been Rachel on second horn. But anyway, so we were having a great time, and probably the thing that we were most interested in were the in-house recordings that the BSO does for us, and we had worked really hard to get our recording folks to record the rehearsals, record the concerts, and then upload them to a drive, basically, so that we could hear them, or because honestly they were sick of the entire brass section basically going into the recording booth, which is just slightly bigger than this room, which is a 5x7 room, and listening on their speakers. And so they did that, and they were available that night after the concert. And we would sit there and we talk about it, and we talked about it a lot. Can you hear this person? Can you hear this person? Are we serving the music here? Is this a section where we need to have a homogenized sound, or do we need to hear specific people come out of the mix? All that stuff was talked about, and we were all in there trying to do what we could, and that's how that worked. And after a while, we kind of realized that anytime that Andres is on the podium, it's being recorded. So you got to bring your A game every night, every night. And there weren't recording sessions. All the recordings were taken from live concerts.
Right.
So,
wow.
Yep. So that's how that worked. And and we continue to do that. And anytime he's up there, I mean, we recorded all the Brahms symphonies. That was a chore, because we did all 4 of them in 2 weeks. It's like okay, all right, fine, yeah, bring it. You have to have that mindset, you can't. There's no time to oh my God, are you serious? No, okay, all right, here we go, and then you just get in there and you just do it, And this is the way that when I was in the St. Louis Symphony during the early Leonard Slatkin days, that's what everyone talked about then. It's you'd have 15-hour or 15 service weeks, and okay. And sometimes the light would be on, the recording light would be on, and you hadn't rehearsed it. I mean, the things like that happened. So we haven't had quite that, because all of our recordings are taken from live concerts. But
so when you have a meeting about, everybody goes back and they listen, and then you have this conversation about what should we do, how should we, blah 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 blah. Invariably, there's differences of opinion, and you don't need to name names unless you feel like naming names. Then go for it. But when there's a difference of opinion, how does that work through? What's that process?
Well, amazingly, things like that never really come up.
Oh, come on. Mike Martin's got to be a pain in the ass.
Honestly, a lot of folks are like, oh, man, screwed that up. Or that's usually me, you know, or, oh man, I could come out a little bit more. Or maybe, you know, I mean, we all talk about it, you know, and it's all good. And everyone's opinion is valid, which makes me feel good because I'm the second trombone player, you know, but both the other two trombone players in the section, Toby and Jem, I just love them so much because they listen to me too. And you know, normally I don't have to say a whole lot. Normally we don't have to say it. At this point, we've been playing now together for 10, 11 years. We know, you know. And you hear the recording, we know what we want. Okay, someone needs to come down, someone needs to come up, you know.
And were those conversations? Was that like just low brass, and then separately just trumpets, or was it?
A lot of times, you know, it just depends. Whoever comes in and we talk and whatever, you know, a lot of times I'm just listening and just like, okay, I see what's going on over here. And, you know, you can learn a lot from not saying anything. And so then, you know, if for example, if someone's, maybe our principal trumpet player says, you know, I'm feeling like I have to, you know, like you can tell. It's like, okay, all right, well, you know, we'll yield a little bit. You know, we try to do those kinds of things, you know, because you got to play for your colleagues too, you know. So that's kind of how it works, you know. We're all just a bunch of human beings trying to make a good product, and
that's great.
So that's what we try to do, and everyone's very respectful.
It seems like you've got such a healthy situation there. I mean, there's a number of you in that back row that I know well enough that if there was anything really substantially negative to say about you know your music director, like I would have heard it. Not that I would share it right now, but like I've heard nothing. Like everybody you know, I mean, overall it's like seems like a happy place to work, and there's great music being made, and that's that can sadly be rare in this business. So it's pretty cool that you're getting to experience it.
I think so.
So yeah, I
think so. You know, we love Andres, and we want to see him as long as he's willing to be there, and you know, but you know, things are always changing. You know, we have a new executive director, right? Things are changing. We can see it. Things are changing, and instead of, you know, getting stuck in the past, you know, we're just okay. You know, let's just move forward and, you know, try and stay in the moment as much as we can, and not get distracted by what could happen in the future or what's happened in the past. And just do the best with what we have now.
Yeah, good stuff. Mm-hmm. All right, so next is the Practicing Corner, presented by Hitz Academy Practice Coaching. Hey, want to get more done in less time in the practice room? Like compound interest in a bank account, make yourself even just 10% more efficient in the practice room will make you a better practicer forever, and those results will continue to compound for literally the rest of your career. Let Practice Coaching from Hitz Academy help you implement systems that will improve every aspect of your practicing routine, do better at auditions, and unlock your true potential as a musician. And I'll also maybe even throw in a little knowledge on Velcroing things, because that seems to be really important to playing at least the trombone at a world-class level. Learn more at practicecoach.link/coaching. That link, as always, is in the show notes. There's the Velcro sound. So Steve, what is a practicing tip that you can offer up to Lance and I, and by extension to everybody else who's listening?
Okay, practice tip. Well, it's a God, there's a lot of things. Learning how to practice, learning how to stay in the moment when you're practicing, right? I think having a practice schedule is a really good idea, actually. Too many people go into a practice room not knowing what they're going to practice, and they'll stay in there for 2 hours, and then not much gets done. I think a really great way to go about practicing is to schedule out about actually 8 or possibly even 9 different mini sessions. That's what I like to do. And each session could be 5 minutes, it could be 15 minutes, it could be 20 minutes. But knowing when to stop is really important, so that you can get onto the next session. And sometimes the sessions can happen back to back. But you know, you start off with your warm up, and 15-minute warm up is all you need, and you know, the next session could be Schlossberg, the next session could be Marsteller. You just take a little things, try to address every part of your playing every day. This isn't really a secret. I got this from Joe. This is what he recommended. But the benefits of that are so great because you know, it's when you're done with 15 minutes of just whatever particular skill and doing one skill really, really well, instead of trying to cram all the different skills into one session. If you can just focus on one skill at a time, it could be recording yourself. It could be just one thing. And then you're done. You're like, I could go more, but I'm going to stop now. And then it alleviates burnout. You never get burnout. You know, if you're always moving on, okay, I'll get this one thing tomorrow. I'll get another chance at it tomorrow. You know, it leaves you motivated for the next session, right? So, you know, whenever you put down your instrument, you know, when you can't wait for the next session, then you're doing it right.
That was deep, man.
That's my thought.
All right.
No, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah. I think so many players are afraid that it's going to fade away. Like if I don't do this thing, then I won't be able to do it tomorrow. Like I have to touch everything in every session, or it's not going to be there. And having that faith and trust and maturity to know that, yeah, I'll get to this later. There's a time for this, and that's not right now.
Bingo.
I think that's really important.
Exactly.
And I love how I've heard a lot of teachers stress the importance of, you said it, being present, but of like maintaining a good attitude within a practice session for obvious reasons, because you get more done, and you know, and it's not torture. But I like how you just connected some dots, which is that also leaves you rejuvenated for the next one. So it feels much. That's. I'm not sure if I've heard that put that succinctly before. That's borderline profound. Like,
okay.
Velcro, yeah, print that out and Velcro that to your wall, man. That's your modular wall. Lance, I can't be alone in being disappointed that the light has not fallen.
It bumps me out.
I'm looking up at it right now, going,
I think
it might.
I think that this is like, I think this disproves any possibility of a higher power of any kind like steering the universe, because I've been praying real hard now for the last hour and just nothing, man. It's just still up there, because I was hoping, because as Lance, you just met him, but as you can hear, he's very, very thoughtful, right? Like, and so it was not going to come in the middle of him acting like you and I usually do. It was going to come in the middle of him actually being helpful, which was going to make it funnier.
I just pressed it back. It was hanging by a thread.
Oh, that's on me, man. That's on me. I should have kept my mouth shut.
See?
Oh,
Yep.
People have been trying to teach me that lesson for 46 years. Steve, this has been wonderful, as I knew
Thanks
it
for
would be.
having me.
Yeah, of course. It's always great to, I actually swung by Steve Dumaine, your former colleague in San Antonio. He does a lot of metal work. We're gonna get him on the podcast. He was just like, Lance, he's pulling a Palafian. He's like, I'm just not ready yet. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not ready yet? Like, you should just come on the podcast. He's this fascinating dude. He's not only one of the best tuba players in the world, but he also does all this metal work. And he has this enormous studio like next to his house, and there was in his neighborhood is like a lot of artists live there, and they had this open house, and so Nicholas and I went and surprised him, which he was like, he couldn't believe that I just like dropped in, but I got to see his studio, which is huge, and it was really cool. But he said, "Who are you interviewing? Coming up?" And I said, I was like, "You mean other than you?" And he just like was like, "No, who are you actually interviewing?" And then I said, "Steve," and he was like, "Oh, I love that dude." So yeah, it was it was great. And Nicholas was like,
at Dumaine's studio, he solders everything to the walls.
That's true. Yeah, it's like the things that are on Steve's. Yeah, he's got like if things fell. That was when he told like Nicholas, he was like, "Don't walk in there because things fall over in there, and they will.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But this has
what
been
a great guy.
Absolutely. This has been absolutely wonderful. I loved hearing a lot about this. I mean, just I really dug the Alexander technique and the Don Green thing, like, you know, how those kind of hit you at the same time in life and how those were interwoven at the time, and then even how your perception of it changed afterwards. And yeah, it's cool. And I think it's also important to note, to close with this, is that you had like a real like playing breakthrough when you were in your third or fourth semester of graduate school at Juilliard, when you had already done an entire undergrad at Indiana, which is like, you know, I mean, like world-class teachers, and you had been taking things very seriously that whole time, and then all of a sudden there was a breakthrough. So you never know when that's going to come, because it's not like you didn't take lessons with anybody good and then suddenly you got to Juilliard and had the breakthrough. It happens when it happens, but you kept showing up. And that's why I'm going to do like 500 Brass Junkies episodes, and then I'm going to become decent as an interviewer. It's like, so tell me about that thing that happened.
What are you talking about?
Just tell me about it. What about it? Just about it. Just talk about it.
How about I'll talk a bit and then I'll stop and then you talk some.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Okay, go now. When
I
stop talking,
it reminds me of that Chris Farley episode, and he was interviewing. Who was he interviewing? One of the Beatles.
There's only 4. So.
Oh yeah,
probably wasn't John Lennon.
Yeah, no, it was yeah, it was like, hey, remember when?
Yeah.
You were in the Beatles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Do you remember when you were in the Beatles?
Yeah.
That would have to be some serious trauma. If it's like, do you remember when you were in the St. Louis Symphony? You're like, I don't. I have no memory of that anymore at all. I've blocked it out.
It's awesome.
All right,
we are going. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
This is great. We are going to have Steve hang out for the bonus episode, which we have with every one of our guests. They hang out and somehow get less serious. Although sometimes the bonus episode gets super serious. I guess it just kind of depends on our mood. I let Lance steer the emotional ship there, which usually just heads. He aims the ship towards the shore, to just ram it. But that's okay. You can go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to get access to all of the bonus episodes with a whole lot of people, including some of his Boston Symphony colleagues, which we have also interviewed. This is the first non-Mike, I think, that we've interviewed from the Boston Symphony. It was like we had the Martin and then we had the Roy Lance, but I don't think that we've interviewed anybody else from the Symphony. So I guess we're on to the Steves. Like, so there we go. But thank you to everybody who is already supporting us at Patreon. And I think that's going to do it. Lance, is there anything else that I'm forgetting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. And that is going to do it for this episode of The Brass Junkies. You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dedos and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray for Jens on Twitter and Instagram and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/prayforjens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.